Whispers of the cursed island. The rain had just stopped when Arman stepped off the small ferry onto the rugged island. His shoes sank slightly into the damp earth, the scent of salt and pine filling his lungs. The island, barely marked on any map, seemed like another world altogether in tamed cliffs. Forests so dense they looked almost black, and a mysterious ruin that he had come to see for himself. It was meant to be an adventure, nothing more. He wanted to escape the monotony of his routine life back in the city, where everything was predictable, including his own heart. What he did not expect was to find someone waiting on the island. Leila appeared like a whisper from the trees, her long black hair wet with rain, eyes sharp and questioning as they met his gaze. She wore a cloak made of rough wool, too archaic for someone his age. She looked as if she belonged to another century, as though the island itself had carved her from its rocks and shadows. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice firm yet strangely musical. "I could say the same about you," Arman replied with a nervous smile, clutching the map in his hand. She studied him for a long time, then turned away, walking into the forest without another word. Something about her silence pulled him forward, his footsteps echoing hers until they were moving together through the damp undergrowth. The adventure he had imagined suddenly shifted, no longer about ruins or exploration, but about the girl who seemed part mystery, part danger. As they climbed toward the cliffs, she finally spoke. "The ruin you're looking for isn't a place for tourists. It has a story, a curse even. Many who come here never leave the same." Arman chuckled lightly. "I'm not afraid of old legends." "You should be," she whispered. The ruin stood at the edge of the cliff, its stones blackened with age, walls half collapsed but still radiating something ancient, something heavy. The wind howled around them as if warning them to turn back. Arman stepped closer, running his fingers across the cold stone carvings, when suddenly Leila caught his wrist. Her touch was both warm and electric, sending a current through his body he couldn't explain. He looked at her, really looked at her this time, and something in her eyes made his heart stumble. They were not just the eyes of a stranger, they carried loneliness, longing, and a strange glimmer of hope. "Why are you here, really?" she asked. "I wanted an adventure," he admitted. "Something real, something that makes me feel alive again." She dropped his wrist slowly, her fingers lingering as though reluctant to let go. "And if what you find is more than you can handle, then maybe that's the risk worth taking," he replied. That night, they stayed by a fire in a cave near the cliff. Leila told him the story of the ruin, a tale of two lovers separated by a curse. One had been bound to the island, unable to leave, while the other perished at sea, trying to return. Ever since, the island had been marked by their sorrow, trapping souls who dared to love too deeply here. Arman laughed softly. "That sounds tragic." "It's more than a story," she said, her gaze fixed on the flames. "It's why I can't leave this place." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning he couldn't quite grasp. But as the firelight flickered across her face, he realized he didn't care about curses or legends anymore. All he saw was her, this mysterious, impossible girl who made the silence of the island feel alive. Days passed in a blur. They wandered the forests together, shared food and laughter, and slowly, carefully, their hearts began to orbit one another. Arman found himself telling her things he had never told anyone about his loneliness in the city, his yearning for something extraordinary, his fear that he had been sleepwalking through life. She listened without judgment, her eyes softening with every word. One evening, on the cliff where the ruin stood, he finally asked Leila, "If you could leave, would you?" She didn't answer at first. The sea crashed below them, the horizon burning orange with the sunset. Then, almost too softly to hear, she said, "Only if I wasn't alone." Arman reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining. It was as if the island itself exhaled at that moment, the wind falling still, the air heavy with their closeness. He wanted to kiss her, to break through the distance she kept like a shield. But before he could, she pulled away, her eyes glistening. "You don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "I am part of the curse. If you love me, you will never leave this place either." He stepped closer, his voice steady. "Then maybe that's exactly where I'm meant to be." She shook her head, tears streaking down her cheeks. "No, Arman. You have a life waiting for you. Dreams beyond this island. I can't steal that from you." But Arman refused to turn back. The following night, when the moon bathed the ruin in silver light, he found her there, standing among the broken stones as though caught between worlds. Without hesitation, he stepped forward and kissed her. It was desperate, aching, and filled with all the things he couldn't say. For a moment, the world seemed to collapse around them. The stones groaning, the air crackling with an unseen force. When the wind settled, she was still there in his arms reel, trembling, alive. The curse had not taken him. Instead, something had shifted. Leila's face was bathed in moonlight, and for the first time she looked free. "You broke it," she whispered. Arman didn't understand, but she explained with tears in her eyes. The curse had bound her to the island until someone chose her not out of pity, not out of accident, but out of love so fierce it would defy even fate. He had done what no one else could believe in her more than in his own freedom. The next morning, the island felt different. The shadows were lighter, the sea calmer, the air less burdened. Together, they boarded the small ferry back to the mainland. She gripped his hand tightly as if afraid she might vanish with every passing wave, but she didn't. She was free. When they reached the shore, Arman looked at her and smiled. "Adventure, right?" She laughed through her tears. "No, Arman, this isn't an adventure anymore. This is love." And as they walked away from the sea, their steps in rhythm, hearts still racing from everything they had endured. Arman realized that he had found more than an escape, more than a story. He had found the one thing he hadn't even known. He was looking for someone who turned his world into an endless journey. A love strong enough to feel like both destiny and freedom.